If you're tired of nutrition pyramids that don't lead anywhere, then this video is for you. And if you paid attention to the recent USA nutrition guidelines earlier this year, you probably noticed that there was a bit of a shift in terms of how the nutrition pyramid was reorganized and the added emphasis on certain foods. Before we talk more about that, I want to also talk about the fact that I live in a country here in the United States where it's estimated that about 72% of the population is either overweight or obese. And I think just being with that statistic and letting that hit home really points out the fact that pyramids alone, guidelines by themselves, they don't really solve the root cause of our health or fitness problems. I believe we live in a modern society that values and prioritizes productivity, promotion, getting more work done, and doesn't value, devalues even, health, well-being, mental wellness, longevity. In fact, I would say that most of the things that we do as modern humans are actually counteracting longevity, health, and strength. And so pyramids by themselves, they don't solve health problems. Nutrition guidelines by themselves, they don't magically solve, nutrition habits or weight loss issues. And, to be frank, neither does weight loss drugs or pharmaceuticals, at least not according to the long-term studies over an extended period of time. You know what really solves and goes to the core root of health and fitness challenges is looking at behavioral psychology, is understanding yourself, understanding what drives your behaviors, what is compelling you to take action in certain environments, with certain beliefs, with certain backgrounds. And maybe you're like me, and you grew up with more of the standard American diet, and maybe had some cultural influences. Both my parents are immigrants from South America. And so even though I grew up in a kind of like typical American household, there was cultural influences. And so all this is kind of like, it gets mixed into, like if you have a big pot of like influences, like you have like influence of culture, influence from childhood, influence from maybe, parents or certain beliefs that you acquired, influence from kind of like influences from society, influences from kind of like even, current health and fitness trends. So all that kind of like comes together into kind of a health and fitness soup, so to speak. And sometimes that soup is really delicious. It's a great soup. It's like a lentil tomato soup, right? Which is amazing. And sometimes the soup is not so great. And sometimes, you serve the soup and the result is not so great. And so what we want to look at is basically want to pull open the hood, and we want to focus on habits over pyramids. And when you focus on habits over pyramids, you start to go to the root cause. You start to understand like, what are the motivations that are actually driving my behaviors? What is actually influencing me to take consistent action and or maybe inconsistent action? Because not taking action is still a choice. It's maybe not a conscious choice. Maybe it's not, the choice of like, hey, I want to, do a certain action, but no choice in itself is still a pathway. So if you're a career-driven parent or high performer over the age of 40 and you want to drop 10 to 30 pounds without feeling like you have to sacrifice your family time or lifestyle, then moving beyond just pyramids and really going to the root cause and understanding your behavioral psychology, your habits, and really how you want to design your health, your body, and the results that you want to create can be a very effective path to take. So let's talk about Dr. Eric Helm's nutrition pyramid. So I'm going to bring up another pyramid here. So we have the first pyramid over here with kind of like the USA nutrition guidelines. And, one thing with this pyramid is it advocated for certain food groups, and we'll talk about some of those food groups and maybe why they aren't maybe the best options to choose, especially if you're interested in optimal health or longevity, really over the long term. And then we have another pyramid over here, which was popularized by Dr. Eric Helms, who is a world-renowned researcher in the field of strength and conditioning and exercise. And so his pyramid is a little bit different. It's really focused on the right order of priority for certain health and fitness behaviors. And so again, we have one pyramid here talking about certain food groups, another one talking about the right order priority. So like I said, let's pull open the hood and let's look at Dr. Helms' pyramid and let's see what's going on here. All right, so looking at the nutrition pyramid here by Dr. Eric Helms, what I want to highlight real quick here is here at the bottom. So we have 5 levels of priority, starting from the bottom layer right here, and then going all the way up until we reach the 5th layer. Now, one of the most important things that I want to highlight here is that when we focus on any new skill set, on any new practice, the most important thing when it comes to permanent skill acquisition is consistency. It's really putting in the reps. And this is probably something that you're familiar with. It's probably not the first time that you've heard this. One of my favorite quotes regarding this topic is that the master has failed more times than the beginner has ever tried. And so it's just a reminder that putting in enough reps is a prerequisite for health and fitness success, especially if you want that success to be long-term or even lifelong. You see, I think most of us are led astray, just like myself. For many years, I was fooled into believing that in 6 weeks, I could create 6-pack abs, or in 90 days, I could drop, 30, 40 pounds, or that I could build 10 pounds of muscle in 1 month, or that cinnamon by itself burned off body fat. I remember that one. There are so many promises that are made in the health and fitness realm. And I believe that being led astray isn't your fault. I don't believe it's your fault. I also don't believe it's easy to navigate the health and fitness world without feeling like you're being led astray. And so the first order of priority here, when we look at principle-based thinking and principle-based frameworks, is just being consistent. In fact, I would say that the more nuance that you add into somebody's life, and this is something that I've personally seen over the past 8.5 years of coaching hundreds of people worldwide in their health and fitness, is that the more complicated and the more nuanced you make something, the harder it is to stick to it. And so we want to keep things simple. We want to keep things straightforward. And so when we start at the bottom here, again, consistency is the foundation. I know I'm really beating my foot here, but this is the core for building sustainability and permanence into your health and fitness journey. So energy balance, when we look at energy balance is essentially how much you're eating. It's the quantity of food that you're eating each day. And so when you look at how much you're eating, this is the basement, so to speak, of your fitness house. If we aren't clear on how much you're eating, it's going to be very challenging. In fact, it's going to be very difficult to actually create sustainable and permanent changes, specifically in the realm of weight loss / fat loss, aka dropping body fat tissue, or building muscle and gaining weight. So energy balance is, again, how much you're eating per day. It's just a fancy way of saying, am I eating at or near my maintenance calories, aka the amount of food that you would need to eat to just basically keep your body weight and your body composition more or less the same. That's a foundation. For 95% of people who are struggling with their weight loss or their fitness progress, this is where you need to focus on first. Nowhere else. Don't even think about macronutrients. Don't get caught up in micronutrients. Don't even worry about food timing or nutrient timing. And God forbid you go down the rabbit hole of supplementation. And, God knows how many new promises are being made with supplements that you can drop and burn off body fat, or you can build muscle faster. Guys, at the end of the day, we need to be focused on the foundation, on your basement, right? And your basement starts with energy balance. It starts with just what's my total caloric intake every day and every week. And again, it doesn't need to be perfect on a daily basis. In fact, if it helps release some of the perfectionism, your weekly caloric intake is oftentimes more important than your daily. And so that can help release some of the perfectionism of like, oh my goodness, like I have to be exactly on point with my calories, or it's all screwed. It doesn't have to be that way. So a weekly caloric allotment or a weekly caloric intake can actually be even a more valuable tool with here. But regardless, consistency's the base. It's the floor. And once you establish your floor, aka you start to set up health and fitness standards. A standard, in the way that I define it, is basically your bare minimum. It's the bare minimum that you're not willing to tolerate to go beneath. It's your floor. It's your basement, as I've mentioned a few times already. So energy balance, aka how much you're eating per day, is your floor. Now you can have energy balance, negative energy balance for fat loss or weight loss, aka being in a caloric deficit, or you can have energy balance for muscle building or weight gain, which would be a caloric surplus. Again, that's the foundation. From there, once you've done that consistently, once you've built that foundation, that standard there, then we can graduate over to macronutrients. We can start to talk about protein intake. We can start to talk about carbohydrates. We can start to talk about fat intake, things of that nature. We can then graduate to micronutrients. This is then talking about your vitamins, your minerals, your phytonutrients, your antioxidants. From that point, we can then talk about chronobiology, food timing, circadian rhythms, maybe potentially talking about, interesting topics like lean gains, or one of my favorite topics, which is chrono shred. But again, notice how easy it is to get caught up in those topics and get very excited about it, but then forget about the fundamental principles. Remember the quote, "The master has failed more times than the beginner has ever tried." That means that the master, the health and fitness master, and when I say master, I'm talking about mastering your body, your health, your life, not anybody else's, not trying to impress anybody else, but leading by example. So it's really mastering the fundamentals right here. So that essentially sums up Dr. Eric Helm's nutrition pyramid. And something that he says often is, don't put the cart before the horse. And basically what he's trying to communicate here is focus on the fundamentals first. Don't get caught up in level 3, 4, 5. Don't flip the pyramid upside down, which is what most people do. They'll start to work on supplements first. Maybe they'll go to micronutrients or nutrient timing, and then they'll totally forget that focusing on how much they're eating per day is actually the first driver for results. However, there is one problem with Helms's pyramid that doesn't really tell us what we should be eating. If we come over here and we look at the 2025-2030 dietary guidelines for Americans, which was, again, it was released at the beginning of 2026. So depending on when you listen to this, it's been a bit ago, right? So it's been a few months. One thing that I want to highlight right here is just looking at the food groups themselves. So you can see here that there's a big emphasis on the left side of the pyramid here with protein, dairy, and healthy fats. And then on the right side, we have lots of fruits and vegetables. And then wrapping it up here near the bottom to the middle is whole grains. And so what is beneficial, and just acknowledging what is positive from this, is that there's a great emphasis, bigger emphasis on vegetables, fruits, and whole grains. Now, when it comes to longevity, if we're really looking at the best health outcomes over the longest period of time, studies like the China study, the Nurses Health study, the Adventist study have shown with the greatest number of people over the longest periods of time that certain food groups or certain food products, so to speak, can have
detrimental effects on long-term health. And so there's two main groups of diseases when we look at kind of like disease groups. We have diseases of affluence and we have diseases of poverty. Now, if you're the average American, European, in fact, if you're the average person in most modern countries, you probably won't face any diseases of poverty. These are things of like malnutrition, parasitic infections, just things like if you don't have access to food at all, or you're just not getting good quality food. For most people, that's usually not the issue. For most of us, the potential problem is diseases of affluence. And so diseases of affluence are basically modern day diseases, things like cancer, diabetes, heart disease, and things of that nature. And so the interesting thing from studies like the China study or the Nurses Health study is that they found that diseases of affluence actually were directly associated. They're directly correlated with higher consumption of animal products, meat, dairy, and basically foods that come from animals. And that's uncomfortable to accept as a truth. And so the thing is, there isn't really any high quality nutrition that's taught, educated, or shared with children, with young adults, with even adults in general as we go through life. In fact, even doctors themselves, doctors are ones who recommend, life-saving practices for us. Even they take maybe a course, maybe two, during their whole 10 plus years of medical training. And so what's interesting here is that there's a huge education gap on what are actually the correct foods to eat for the best health outcomes over the longest period of time. And again, this is not a video here telling you what to eat or what not to eat. It's just me sharing and just helping raise awareness on these are the studies that show what foods have the best health outcomes. And if you want some of those outcomes, this is a potential pathway that you can choose. Again, this is not all or nothing. This is really a path to take ownership of your health and fitness, whether you're fully veg or you're on the journey or you just want to add more fruits and vegetables to your plate. I think everybody can probably agree that eating more fruits and vegetables is probably a good thing. It's probably not going to hurt your health. Probably having a couple more apples, having some more broccoli, having some more asparagus, maybe some bananas. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, it's probably going to benefit us, especially if you're familiar with the standard American diet and how much processed foods, how many chemicals are thrown at us every day in ways that should definitely be fully illegal. And yet these are legal practices to toss in so much chemicals and additives and things that they were never meant to be part of the human body. So the quick takeaway here is that a calorie by itself isn't just a calorie. A calorie actually is more than just a calorie. And so we have how much you're eating. If we look at Dr. Helms' pyramid, we have the 2025, 2030 dietary guidelines over here and the intersection here. So if we start to look at how can we merge what are the best foods to eat for optimal health, strength, and longevity, and we have over here, how much should we be eating in terms of the right quantity, macronutrients, energy balance, micronutrients, things of that nature, we start to come to a intersection at the middle of both of them because there's truths in both of these guidelines and pyramids here. There's truths, and I think that's the problem with health and fitness is that there's half truths in certain things that are promoted to us. There's partial truths. And so we'll hear something or we'll come across something and it will resonate because part of it is true, but it's not the whole picture. So I want to come over here and show you what would that intersection look like? If we merge the right foods in the right amount, what would that actually look like? Okay, so I'm over here on my other screen and I wanted to show you guys. So I did actually make another pyramid. Turns out actually pyramids are a pretty useful tool for teaching. Maybe not so helpful or useful in terms of coaching and guiding people through behavioral psychology. But it actually turns out they're a pretty useful tool as a teaching tool, so to speak. So let's start off with the intersection. So if we were to have an intersection right in the middle of both of these. So we have, what are the right foods to eat in the right order? So similar to Dr. Eric Helm's nutrition pyramid, where we had kind of like how much to eat and then some of the tactics and techniques that follow after that. In this case right here, we have an upgraded nutrition pyramid where we're looking at just food quality. And as you'll see right here, the name of the game is consistency. That's the name of the game, is just be consistent. Don't be perfect, but just be consistent. And some days things aren't going to go great. Some days you're not going to have any fruits or vegetables. You're going to be like, what is an apple? Because all I know are these 12 donuts in front of me. And it is what it is. I read one time that it's estimated that the average human will eat about 80,000 meals across their entire lifetime. And I thought that's very interesting, because if you have about 80,000 meals across your entire lifetime, so even if quite a few of those meals aren't so great, you still have a huge buffer. You still have 80,000 meals. So there's plenty of room to improve, to focus on nutrient quality, and just to focus on consistency over perfection. So the base of this pyramid starts off with fruits and vegetables. Again, fruits and vegetables have the highest amount of phytochemicals, antioxidants, vitamins, and minerals. They're basically, the way that I see them, my personal pharmacy when I go to my grocery store to shop. Food really can be medicine when you use and see it that way. And that's the way that I've changed my relationship with nutrition, specifically with regards to foods from the planet, fruits and vegetables. Now we come over here, we have legumes and whole grains. This is where you're going to get a lot of your carbohydrates, your healthy carbohydrates, to help boost your energy, to fuel your training, fuel your runs, your work, career, family time. On top of that, we have plant protein. Again, depending on the fitness goals that you may have, whether it's a weight loss, a muscle building goal, maybe a sports performance goal, plant protein will, number one, support muscle retention, and number two, potentially support muscle building, depending on the goal. And then also if you're pairing that with a positive energy balance, aka being in a caloric surplus. We have healthy fats on top, which support hormonal functioning, organ functions. And then just to clarify, we're looking at healthy plant fats here as well.
And with healthy fats, so whether it's plant fats or animal fats, typically the higher fat intake, the worse health outcomes, especially over an extended period of time. And this will probably rile up some feathers within the keto or the carnivore communities. But the reality is, this is what all the long-term human studies have found to be the most optimal for the best health outcomes over an extended period of time. So again, a lower fat intake in general tends to be the best for health outcomes. Dr. Campbell actually had a short list of recommendations when it came to how to eat, specific in terms of what foods. And what he said was, number one, choose a whole food, plant-based diet. Number two, ideally aim to keep low fat or lower fat intake. And then number three, reduce processed goods, refined goods, and things like salt, oil, and sugar. And again, this isn't about being perfect. This is about a continuum, right? So if you have a continuum right here, it's really about moving closer towards kind of like the healthier behaviors, right? The health outcomes specifically that you want. And as you'll note right here, there's still space here for some of your favorite foods. So if you're like me and you still enjoy Thai food, pizza, making your own maybe plant-based lasagna, these are some of my favorite meals to have with family, with friends, and just to change things up whenever I'd like to, have a little bit of variety in my nutrition. If I'm being honest, I've reached a point in my own health where I feel like the majority of the time, I'm just naturally craving fruits and vegetables. I'm just naturally craving whole foods from the soil, single food ingredients. And so I want to touch on a potential food plate here that you can break down to make this very easy for yourself. So if you have a food plate in front of you, you can have fruits and vegetables taking up about 40 to 50%. You'll then have plant protein over here, about 20, 30%, legumes and whole grains, again, another 20, 30% right here, and healthy fats right here usually get added in via plant protein, legumes, whole grains, and then anything extra that you want to add in. So again, pretty simple food plate to build out. This doesn't need to be complicated. It's really looking at whole foods, single food ingredients, ideally plant-based, plant-sourced if possible, and a quick run of some principles that I found very helpful, especially with guiding my own progress and many of the clients that we've helped and supported. And so 5 principles here that can help guide and simplify your health and fitness. Make this very practical, easy to implement. Let's start off with number 1. Health is a result of repeated correct actions. Number 2, consistency beats perfection every single day. Number 3, less is more when you're doing the right things in your nutrition. Number 4, taking ownership of your nutrition and health is how you create radical transformation. It's not making things harder. And number 5, the 80-20 rule is how you win in your health. So it's not about doing things perfect every single day or every single minute. It's about really focusing on the key behaviors over an extended period of time, and then just dialing that in over and over again as you continue to progress in your health and fitness journey. I'll leave you with this quote: less is more when you're doing the right things. And this is what we want to do. We want to do less, but we want to do the right things in the right order. So I want to end off this video and just share something from Dr. Esselstyn. Dr. Esselstyn was one of America's Doctor of the Year. He was one of the leading heart surgeons at the Cleveland Clinic. And one of the things that he mentioned about heart disease is that, and I quote, "Heart disease is like a toothless paper tiger. When you eat the right foods, it virtually disappears." And so what Dr. Esselstyn was hitting on was the importance of studies like the China study, the Nurses' Health study, the Adventist study, and really highlighting that when you eat the right foods in the right amounts, you're only going to create the best health outcomes, especially over the long term. He also mentioned that besides sex or religion, getting people to change their dietary patterns is probably the hardest thing. And it doesn't necessarily have to be hard. It can be simple. It can be straightforward. There may be difficult parts along the journey, but one of the things that I found very helpful in my own health journey has been trying to focus on 1 or 2 new actions at a time. When you look at health and fitness from a 30,000 foot view, it's not about trying to do 100 new things every single week or every month. It's about nailing down the fundamentals, nailing down the key health and fitness skills, focusing on those until they become habitual, until they become part of your daily routine, and then, and only then, moving and graduating onto the next ones. So the real solution here is health and fitness standards. It's choosing your floor, creating that floor in the areas of health and fitness that you want to master, that you want to take ownership of, whether that's dropping 10 to 30 pounds of body fat, maybe it's building your next 4 to 8 pounds of muscle, maybe it's just becoming a lean, strong, healthy role model for your family, especially after the age of 40 and wanting to lead your community by example. And maybe it's just regaining your own self-confidence and feeling like the person that you see looking back at you is someone that you feel proud of. Whatever your motivation, whatever your goal, health and fitness standards, they're your floor and they're what will take you to the next level. If you enjoyed this video, subscribe for more. And if you want to learn how to create simple and easy macronutrient and calorie goals without feeling overwhelmed or confused, check out this video over here on how to do that.